So big T trauma is going to be defined by these one-time events that we go through where we really feel like our life or somebody else's life that we're witnessing is being threatened. Okay, so these are going to be things like a car accident, combat, a natural disaster, an assault,
sexual assault,
right, a rape,
mugging, right?
Yeah, these one-time events where it happens, it's horrible, you really do feel like your life is in danger, even if, you know, looking back, you can say, oh, I wasn't, but in that moment, it felt like it.
Your psyche feels like there's the threat of death.
Exactly. Yep. So that's a big T trauma, and that's typically what people think of when they hear the word trauma, and that's very valid. These are all very valid traumatic experiences, but what most people don't realize is that there's a whole other category of traumas that look very different, but that can have very much the same impact on your psyche and your psychological development, and these are little T traumas, and they are defined by experiences and events that you have that if it were to happen one time, likely would not have a huge detrimental impact on yourself, okay? And you don't necessarily feel like your life is in danger, okay? But it's the cumulative effect of having many of these experiences over time that actually ends up having the detrimental effect on your sense of self and development.
Exactly. I was just going to say that.
Of course you are.
On your sense
That's
of
what
self.
we do.
Yeah. Which we also call complex trauma. Okay.
Yeah.
So just a quick kind of additional note too when you're talking about big T and small t, because we hear this all the time from people that come in and again have misunderstandings regarding trauma. They also think that if I identify the one thing, like there must be one event in my life and I just have to identify it, focus on it, resolve that, and then all of these other issues are going to go away. And it is, number one, a gross misunderstanding. And I wish that it was in some ways that simple, but it's not. So actually, not that the big T traumas are not significant, they are, but the small T traumas that actually are what affect how we feel about ourselves, how we maneuver through our emotional world, how we are in relation to others, okay? Those are the things that typically are what drive compulsions, like compulsive overeating.
Exactly.
Okay?
Right.
Yeah.
So some examples of small T traumas are going to be things like bullying, okay? Again, if a kid is mean to you one day out of your entire academic career, that's probably not going to have a huge impact on you. But if you are bullied many, many times, that could have a huge impact on you. A lot of what we see in relation to emotional and binge eating with these small T traumas is this interpersonal or what we can call relational trauma with your caregivers, with people who are important to you. So definitely parents, because they tend to be very important to us as kids, but also siblings, extended family, teachers, coaches, parents of your best friends. So if there are hurtful interactions that are chronic, that are ongoing, where your needs aren't met, that's a small T trauma.
Right. And usually they're layered. Okay. So if you are bullied at school, but you were valued and complimented and you have a great core sense of self and self-esteem and confidence, that bullying is still no fun. But if you are bullied on top of having been, let's say, ridiculed, right? Or not cared for appropriately, right? Or verbally abused in your family, right? It's going to layer on top of that, okay? So there's no strong foundation. There's like some cracks in that foundation, and then you come up against these other additional small T traumas, and yourself and your psyche tend to crumble under it.
Absolutely, yeah, because we look to these trusted and safe adult others like our caregivers and our mentors to give us that sense of safety in the world so that we then have the resilience to deal with other things that have the potential to be a little T trauma, like bullying or getting rejected, in certain ways. So we do need that safety in our caregivers, in our family system, in our close-knit community to really protect us from those other things. And like you said, if we don't have that, then it just, all of these different experiences layer up, and then you go into adulthood with just this tremendous amount of unresolved pain.
Yeah. So let's label a couple more like interpersonal small t traumas.
Yeah.
So, let's say in your family of origin, your parents are alcoholic, right? And they are not there for you. Maybe there are times of verbal, emotional, or physical abuse, domestic violence, when there is drinking behavior. And that happens chronically over time, right? That's going to be damaging on a number of levels, okay? If there is a sibling that has behavioral problems, right? Mom and dad are out working and the sibling continues to beat you up, right? So that you have this hypervigilance when you are at home, right? You never feel safe, okay? That's another form of small t trauma.
Yeah.
Okay. A parent that might call you names, make fun of you, like tease you for, parts of yourself or your person, right? That's another form of small t trauma. And that gets internalized. It becomes your experience of self.
Right.
And then that experience of self has deficiencies as it then goes forward in the world.
And I would also like to add to the list an absence of attention.
Yes.
So there's definitely negative, hurtful, sometimes abusive attention. Then, another version of small t trauma is an absence of attention. So this could be the child who was left home alone at an age when he or she was really too young to be able to feel safe and secure to do so. Could be a child who maybe due to limited resources, the parent has to work 2 jobs and they have to work night shift. And so this child has to put themselves to sleep just out of sheer necessity. This could be, feeling emotions, having a rough day and being sent to your room until you can come back down and, be pleasant with the family and just kind of being left alone to make sense out of everything going on. So when, again, this happens one time, it's probably not going to be the end of the world to your sense of development. But if this is a chronic thing and you're having to internally manage all of this big emotion and distress and feeling like there's really no one there to help me contain this and organize this, that also can become another form of trauma.
Right. Yeah. So that's kind of this wider net, right? We've got trauma, we've got large T trauma, we've got small T trauma. We've just talked about kind of a general overview of that small T trauma. We've talked about how that can affect you in other video casts. We'll certainly come back and talk about that more. But I really was hoping today to talk about a really sub-specific type of small T trauma. And when we named today's video cast, not seen, not heard, not safe, okay? So one of the things that is not necessarily identified or labeled enough, in my opinion, but I treat the after effects of it all the time, is what is called a narcissistic family system, okay? So let's talk about that a little bit, okay? Yeah. So if there is a narcissistic family system, that means that either one or two of your parents fall into the psychological category of a narcissist. And when there is a narcissist, truly, they are not able to see really anything, anyone, any experience, okay, outside of their own.
Right.
Okay. So the world is actually taken in as it relates to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. To them as the parent, to you as the parent. Yeah.
Exactly. So when you have a narcissistic family system, first of all, the needs of the parents always come first. Okay. So oftentimes, that shows up with children that end up feeling guilty for having basic needs
like of any kind.
Mom, can you go to Target and get me the supplies that I need tomorrow?
Right.
The need, can I have a play date, or can I have a ride to go, to the mall or over to someone's house, right? So it puts the narcissistic parent out. The narcissistic parent doesn't want to have to be bothered, okay? Their needs come first, and most of the time, the child is made to feel like their needs are too big, okay? Guilty,
bad,
right? You're causing me all of this distress, okay? Or they're bad,
right?
Or a deeper level of that, shame.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yeah.
We talked a lot about the highly sensitive personality that typically is prone to emotional eating. So if you have a highly sensitive child that feels very, very deeply, and you have a narcissistic parent that it's all about them, okay?
Deadly combo.
Most of the time that shows up in the form of excessive guilt, shame, having to take care of
lots of caretaking.
I know this is an area that you love to work with, but caretaking of the parents. Right. You want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think as a child, when you are in the presence of a narcissistic parent, again, we've said this in other video casts. I think it's always worth repeating, which is children are very egocentric. So things happen because of them. So if a parent, let me back up. If a child has a need, which of course you have a need,
right.
you as a child, that's not a pejorative thing. That's a very normal, natural thing to have needs as a kid.
Yeah.
This narcissistic parent with this very appropriate need, and you get a very inappropriate response, right? The times when the narcissistic parent will meet that need is when it benefits them.
Yes.
Okay. So they will show up and meet your needs, but it's always with a hidden agenda of being praised, of getting something out of it, of looking good, of being the hero, getting their ego stroked, all of that. But they're not genuinely just there to meet your needs and, support you as a child. So you go to them, they don't meet your need in a very genuine way, if at all. And unfortunately, what the child does with that is thinks, well, shoot, I must have the wrong need, or I must have asked the wrong way.
Must be too much, too sensitive, my needs are too great, I'm selfish.
Yeah. So I need to try harder and better to get this parent to meet my needs. And so that's where the success of caretaking develops, where the child is thinking, okay, well, let me go back and strategize how I can do this differently and be more successful. And then they go back and they try harder, and they try to be sweeter, and they try to be more accommodating, and they try to be more patient. And it still doesn't work. And they go back and try again.
Yeah, so they keep trying. And then another scenario along those same lines would be, hey, a narcissist loves to get, kind of nurtured. A narcissist loves to get compliments, So the child learns that when I tune into the needs of others, I get the goodies. I get kind of the love. I get the praise.
Scraps, at least.
Parents want to be with me, right, when I am focusing on them. And we're going to come back to this in a little bit, because this then absolutely shows up in the here and now in interpersonal relationships.
Right.
One other really typical scenario that I see with a narcissistic family system is that oftentimes a child is what we call a narcissistic extension of the self, okay? So what that means is that the child, as it or they show positively onto the parent, okay? So like, oh, the child has good grades, or is thin, or is pretty. Oh, that makes, that's like a positive reflection on me, okay? So that child gets the positives, but not based on who they truly are inside. It is only what the parent wants them to be. And then the parent gives a little bit of credit to the child, but takes most of the credit themselves. Oh, you're a doctor because of me, right? Okay. So what that ends up feeling like for the child is that who I really am inside is not seen. It's not valued. It's not important enough. I have to be exactly what mom or dad want or need me to be for me to be loved, cherished, and to have kind of positive self-esteem.
And it's not safe to dissent from this parent.
Yes.
So it's not safe to want something different, to look different, to be different, to feel different.
Right.
Everything is an extension of this parent, and you have to be a good, positive reflection of them.
Is this hitting home for anybody out there?
Yeah, let us know.
Yeah. Can people relate to this? Okay. What?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
2 exclamation marks. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So like that touches so deep. Okay. So like I'm not seen. I'm not important, right? I have to take care of mom or dad in order to be loved. And when I do, then I'm a good girl. And if I have any other feelings, I don't want to do that, right? Then I'm bad. Mom or dad favors the other person that is doing it. A lot of times these kids are kind of like pitted against each other because it's all about who's making mom or dad feel good in the moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I was also, as you were talking, thinking, and then you kind of grow into adolescence, and what we tend to find then is these adolescents have to be so darn strategic.
Yeah.
They have to think through everything if they want to get their need met. There's like this whole sequence of events that has to happen. Yeah. And again, we see that caretaking really take hold. Like, I have to do X, Y, and Z in order to get some scrap of this need met. And I just have to set aside everything going on inside of me so that I can take care of this narcissistic parent. So the noise that starts to take hold inside your mind can be so loud and overwhelming.
And all of that is an unconscious process, right? So all you feel is anxiety, right? And then this impetus towards, I've got to take care of, or I've got to be better, I've got to do this, right? And then when you do meet that need, right, and the parent is happy with you, then you feel kind of relieved. So it becomes like this, it becomes this reinforcing.
Yeah.
We always talk about this kind of like as it shows up in the here and now, and especially through your relationship with food, your relationship with body, right, your relationship with self. How many times do we talk about, like in some of our one-on-one work or in our group process with emotional eaters, that how many times does this show up with, I need to not be, and I'm going to say this 4-letter word, fat, right? I needed to, I know. That was a 4-letter word.
I was like, Julia's thing. Totally.
It's like a bad word. It's like a bad word. Okay, but like... You need some more coffee there. Okay. So that feeling of, I know that mom needs me to be pretty or to be thin or to look a certain way, right? And I see the disappointment on mom's face or I see the disappointment on dad's face, right? So again, I don't know if this is hitting home for any of you, but that sense, when I look exactly mom or dad wants me to, that's this positive reflection on them, then I get the goods, okay? And not the food goodies, the praise goodies.
Right, the attention, a little bit.
And it drives almost like this panic inside, like if you've gained weight, and again, this is going to be all kind of on this unconscious level, but it's almost like there's something wrong with me. That sense of shame comes from some of these dynamics.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. And what's left behind, yes, maybe you feel good temporarily in that moment because you're getting the attention or the praise, but what's left behind is this painful, deep sense of emptiness, just a total sense of emptiness that who you really are and what you really have to offer this world just doesn't matter. Yeah. That's horrible.
Yeah.
It's a horrible place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So we want to, number one, first talk about how this shows up again in the here and now. We're going to focus on 2 primary ways, and again, kind of like some
I know
narrow
what they are
ways
this
within
time.
that. Good. Okay.
You can ask me.
So we're going to talk about 2 primary ways, and then we're going to come back to how to start changing that within yourself.
Yep.
Because always, always, always remember, it doesn't matter when this was created. It doesn't matter how long it's been. What's going to matter today is your relationship with yourself, your relationship with others, and working on changing that so you're not repeating that process within yourself.
And you have absolute control over that.
And you have
wonderful.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I do want to just add one little caveat. I know I'm always the one that's like, oh, I just want to say this. Again, as we talk about parents, we are both parents. We respect, the role of parents and how challenging parenting can be, and that no parent is perfect. None of this is to dog parents. And narcissism is something that people come by honestly.
Yeah.
It is not something that you're born with. At least current research suggests that this is a learned, adapted behavior that the parent learned at a very young age because of the family system that they were in.
Right.
It's a strategy for survival.
Right.
It's
actually an unconscious defense mechanism for survival. So it's not even like you're choosing it. It's like your psyche says, I have to do something to survive.
Exactly.
And so it develops that narcissism.
Yes.
And then oftentimes it's multi-generational.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
It just is.
Yeah. So this is not a bad person. This is not a malicious person. This is a strategy that they learned.
Yeah.
But it just has very deep and painful roots for them. And unfortunately, because they gotten any help, they don't even know to get help. They just pass it down generation to generation. So I just always want to throw that in there because it's so important that we, hold this dialectical space of looking at the pain that was there and how it was created, and it's not okay, and we want to work with it. And also kind of just having compassion and respect for where all of this comes from and that these are not bad or malicious people. So
before we move on, do you want to read that question?
Yeah. I was my mom's confidant and best friend through 3 divorces. Wow.
Holy cow. There you
At
go.
ages 3, 14, and 30. None of those situations were about me, just about her loss and pain. Exactly what we're talking about.
Okay, that's exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah. I've recently realized what this has meant for me and my child.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
I have goosebumps. And that's exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, having to set aside yourself to take care of your parents.
Yeah. So let's talk about these 2 kind of avenues that we have planned for today.
Yeah,
and then this is something, really that I think we might even add on to the next Q&A to talk about this, because it shows up so much. I'm talking about this wonderful comment and this sharing, because oftentimes that's what happens. You become the parent to your parent. It's called parentified. And darn it, when you are parentified, like that child inside never gets parented until as an adult, thankfully, you step into that healthy parent role for yourself, which again, we're going to be talking about over and over again in our work, because that's what brings you into healing. Okay, so we're going to put that on for next time, because I really want to expand on that. Like, that's just such a fantastic comment. Okay.
Yeah, it's painful.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic with insight and connecting the dots. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. So let's talk about what then typically happens interpersonally, and then intrapersonally, and let's define that again. So, of course, the interpersonal is going to be kind of between you and then people in your lives. That can be friends, that can still be family members, that can be spouses, lovers, right? So it's kind of the dynamic that tends to happen, or how you are in those interpersonal relationships.
Right. And what you are unconsciously drawn to because it's familiar.
Because it's familiar, right?
So you end up recreating these dynamics even though you don't like them or want them.
Right, exactly. Always unconscious until it's conscious, and then you can work on changing it.
That's what we're doing.
Yep. And then the other is that intrapersonal, okay? So that intrapersonal is that concept of your relationship with yourself, okay? So we started talking about this with the concept of how you respond to your awareness of your emotions, okay? Kind of that internal voice, that acceptance or rejection or ridicule, okay? That's a part of your intrapersonal process, right? So do you listen to those emotions or you do something negative with it? It can be your self-talk, right? It can be your treatment of yourself. And we can use self as like a capital S to mean like your adult self. We can also talk about other parts within yourself. So those are going to be those psychological tender parts that were wounded that get emotionally arrested. They can't kind of develop because they didn't get the proper nurturing and support. And again, that's part of the healing process. Okay?
Yeah, I like to talk about parts of ourself relative to ages and experiences that we have. You know, we go through some of these small T and big T traumatic experiences, and quite frankly, nobody really gets out of childhood unscathed. No. Some people have...
It's not possible.
No, some people have far more traumas than others for sure. But everybody has some small T traumas. But, you know, I think what happens is then we get these parts of ourselves that go through an experience and don't get to effectively process that experience at that age, at that time, because there's maybe no one to receive it and help us.
It's not safe.
It's not safe. And so that part of ourself kind of fragments off, and it holds then all of the pain or the confusion or the fear or the hurt, and it just holds that, and it's held in your body, it's held in your psyche, and it will be held there until there comes a day, maybe today, where you see that fragmented part of yourself, you acknowledge those emotions that are flash frozen in there, and you start to thaw them out by responding to them with love and nurturance.
Yeah, it stays alive.
Absolutely
within yourself. And that's why in the here and now, it hurts so deeply, right, when something gets activated, because it actually is still alive, okay? So you can say, well, it happened 30 years ago, it shouldn't hurt this much, but guess what? Unless something is healed, it stays alive. And when it gets activated, right, something kind of brings you right to that association, you feel it as if it's happening right now, because in your psychological self, it is still alive and present.
Yeah, that old adage that time heals all wounds.
No,
that's not true.
Yeah.
Time does not heal all wounds. It doesn't matter if it's 5 years or 50 years, it stays alive.
Yeah. Healing, tending to, mending, heals those wounds. And sometimes it takes time.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
But it's not,
it's
not, I wish it healed things, but it doesn't, but it is possible to heal.
Yeah. So let's talk about how to heal.
So let's talk, you know what, let's continue the dialogue. We were actually going to go into the interpersonal first, but let's talk about the interpersonal, because we've already opened up that spot, and it's kind of like right here emotionally. So, as we are saying, there literally, in my opinion, from a psychological self, are these wounded, underparented, not seen, not heard, oftentimes forgotten, okay, or thwarted part of ourself. Okay, so the very treatment that we receive from those primary caregivers, we are automatically going to step into the psychological adult role. And if we're not aware, we're just going to repeat. Okay, that's just like normal. That doesn't mean that you're a bad person. That means that you're
every
human.
does.
Right. That's why we always talk about awareness and insight as really important first steps. We have to be connected to ourselves. We have an awareness of what's going on in the insight of where it came from, right? And then we have this beautiful, beautiful gift, and that is the ability to do it different, okay? So to respond to ourselves, to respond to our emotions, to respond to our needs, right, in a way that is attuned, in a way that says, you know, I'm going to love you in a healthy way. I'm going to hear you. I'm going to support that. I'm going to see you. I'm going to follow through with that need, okay? So that part of yourself can feel safe, protected, valued, loved, worthwhile. Okay?
Good enough. Good enough just as it is.
And good enough. Okay? So this might sound like an abstract concept, and we're going to try to do our best to make it concrete, right? We get kind of a pathway into this work, again, by that connection to self, right? What am I feeling? What is that feeling telling me that I need?
Right.
Okay. What maybe happened? Where did it come from, either in the here and now, or what did it remind me of in the past? And as a loving adult, how can I step in and be kind and responsive to that part?
Right.
Okay. In some of the postings and the dialogue, spontaneously, there's some wonderful parents out there that, even though you've been wounded, you have naturally started talking about, like, I would never do this to my own children on the outside, right? Which is beautiful. So what we're going to ask is for you to consider that same concept within, okay? For those, in my opinion, just as real children on the inside. Okay.
Because we all have real children parts inside of us. They never go away. They never stop having needs and feelings.
That's right. That's right. Mm-hmm. And when they're loved appropriately, they feel important. Mm-hmm. Okay. If there were narcissistic caregivers in your past, if you are a responsive, healthy adult in the here and now, that part of yourself is going to get the love that it needed to developmentally grow up, okay? Because it can get what it needs. It doesn't need to get it the first time around, okay? It doesn't matter when you get it. It just needs to get it for it to then heal and have that active wound and that pain go away, okay? Yeah. So if you are aware of a need and you're aware, I've asked you kind of in some of the Mission Mondays to pay attention to your own language within yourself responsive to needs. If you are disregarding, let's say, I don't know, let's say you want to go shopping on Saturday, just saying. And then you say, no, I can't. I have to do paperwork, right?
Yes.
No, I have to clean the house, right? Okay.
I wouldn't say that.
Because you've been reparented appropriately. Good for you. That's living proof.
But dismissing of those desires, those needs, the things that are important.
Yeah. So literally, when I imagine that, for her, I get this pain inside, like this disappointment, like I can't have, I don't deserve, I need to do this first. And that part of yourself that says, I'm not important. No one's paying attention to my needs, right? So you want to, in that moment, recognize that you are disregarding something that's important to you. Okay. Yeah. If you do that long enough or too much, I bet you're going to end up in the refrigerator or the pantry. Right. Okay. Because that needs something, right? It's saying, I worked hard all week. I want to go shopping on Saturday. That part of yourself is saying, nope, you're not going to. Right. And that other part of yourself is going to say, I'm going to comfort myself in some way, and it's going to reach out for food.
Yeah, the way I'm kind of picturing in my mind is like, for me, shopping can be a way to play, right? If we kind of put it in kids' terms, it's like my adult version of play. I enjoy it. And so I want to go play. Maybe that child part of me is saying that when I'm saying, I think I want to go shopping. And then it's like this, if there were kind of this critical or narcissistic template, the response from this critical self would be, no, you need to work. You need to perform. You need to be more productive. You need to be successful, or whatever all that means. You need to have a pretty house, so you better stay home and clean it. And so, just kind of diminishing that child part, saying, I really need to play. And instead being able to say, you know what, I'm going to carve out time because this part of me needs to play. This is how I want to. And being responsive to that need.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate, right? Okay, because
you're not going to take away my shopping, are you?
Of course not. You know me better than that. Okay. So what oftentimes when we introduce this to the people that we're working with, they say, oh my gosh, but then I'm never going to clean my house. I'm never going to get my paperwork done. So what we say is that's not really what this is about. Right. So what that is holding both, right? So it is the child or the adult's need to play and be heard and responded to. And then there's the other adult needs to say, I don't want to start Monday with my paperwork not done, right? So you would do something like, okay, so between, 8 and 10, I'm going to do some laundry. I'm going to do my paperwork, right? And then at 10 o'clock, I am going to give myself full permission to go and play. Okay.
And that's what we would see in a healthy family system. So if you're a child and you say, you know, Daddy, I really want to play, and he might have some chores that he needs to get done, he might say, okay, kiddo, let me get some of my work done, and then I'm going to make time for you and I to go play. Right. So you see that balancing of, you know, your parents' needs and your needs. It's a healthy, appropriate balance guided by a healthy, appropriate parent. So then you internalize that process, and then you're able to provide that healthy balance for yourself. So all of your needs are getting met. It's not one or the other.
Exactly. Yeah. So listening to yourself, supporting those earlier parts does not mean your life's going to fall apart. No, it actually is going to, it actually, you're going to end up being happier, healthier, more productive. And guess what? Not ending up with food. Right, exactly. Because I guarantee, you know, if you say no to shopping and you are forcing yourself to do paperwork, somewhere in that process, you're going to end up, you know, getting some chips to sit while you're doing your paperwork. You're going to end up not as productive, be upset with yourself for overeating or binge eating, right? And then you're not going to have that wonderful, positive kind of rejuvenation that comes from play, and that healing part that says, I'm important enough to have my needs paid attention to.
Right. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
There was another comment that came in a few minutes ago I wanted to acknowledge. Yes, I had to learn to just hold all my pain inside, because my mom was an alcoholic and couldn't go to her as a little kid.
Okay.
Exactly.
This is exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah. So I want to acknowledge it's 2:47.
Oh my gosh.
We could talk about this forever.
Okay.
So there's a second piece that we want to get to. So I think let's table that, because that is a whole other.
Let's do a little bit of a primer, just so that we can. Let's just do a little.
Yeah, so the second piece, so we've got this intrapersonal kind of what you do within, right? And then what also happens then is you extend this out into your adult relationships, okay? So the dynamic you had with this narcissistic parent and or narcissistic family system becomes how you respond to yourself, but it also becomes what your psyche unconsciously seeks out in other relationships, because it's so familiar. You know how to play this game even though you hate playing it. Right?
Yep. Okay. So that means you're taking care of your partner's needs and denying yours. Okay. You're feeling not good enough, and I've got to do this. So just a little
there's the teaser. You're there for everyone else but yourself.
And then usually feel resentful. And then a lot of times that can go to binge eating. Okay.
Yep, because food's waiting for you to take care of you.
That's right. Okay.
He does a lousy job.
Okay, so obviously, again, like these pieces can get like so full, and we could talk for hours regarding this. So we'll circle back. So we're going to circle back to this. Now
another comment. My parents were alcoholics also, but it was such a norm in our family. That's part of the trauma is dysfunction is the norm.
Exactly. So you might think that was familiar, but to your psyche, it's never the norm, okay? Because a psyche needs to be protected, safe, cared for, responded to for anybody to grow. Okay, so this is giving us some great prompting. Next video cast, right? Like we started out this whole series, we wanted to give you some education kind of all in a row, because we wanted to kind of give you primers and get you going. But what we're going to be doing, because this is so helpful, is every other week we're going to have a video cast that's a theme that we've planned, and then we're going to have Q&A
the following week.
So what we want, it can be, you know, either from the video cast, it can be from stuff that came up in the feed. You can throw questions out and saying, hey, Dr. Julie, Dr. Ashley, please answer this in the next Q&A. We can just kind of pick up on that on the feed. We can get it from here. But the more you can submit your questions, the more we can tailor this directly to you. So please, we're hoping to have like at least 5 questions per video cast where we do the Q&A.
And no question is dumb, okay? No question is dumb. We want all of your questions. This stuff is complicated. It's messy. It's okay to be confused.
Yeah.
And I guarantee if you were wondering it, so is somebody else.
Yeah.
Okay. So please don't ever feel afraid or embarrassed to ask a question. They're all really good questions.
Yeah. I think what you're seeing in the feed is that there are so many commonalities, you know. So not only if someone else is going to have the same question, but if there's something that you feel, again, that sense of shame, like, oh my gosh, I can't put this out there. I guarantee it's going to, number one, touch other people and give them permission and say, hey, I've done that too. I've lived through this too.
Yeah.
I've got the same
wondered
question.
That too.
Yeah. Okay. You guys are like absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
We just can't really applaud you enough. Give us feedback. And
we just got to thank you both so much. Thank you so much. This is really a gift for us to get to do this. It just is so touching that we get to
spread the word.
Spread the word and share this work with all of you.
Yeah.
So thank you for being a part of it.
More people need to heal. Everyone should be being introduced to this work. So it's really a gift to us. So thank you.
Okay, guys. We'll see you next week. We can't wait to hear from all of you in between. Have a wonderful rest of your week, okay?